Hello, everybody, and welcome to Future Nonprofit, a podcast and YouTube channel where we talk with nonprofit practitioners and industry experts about how to build and scale the nonprofits of tomorrow, not just today. I'm Ted Vaughn, partner at Historic, host of Future Nonprofit, and on today's episode, we have Lance Blair, the Senior Benefits and Employee Engagement Manager at Liquid Death. If you are unfamiliar with Liquid Death, you need to listen to this episode because they are a brand changing how water is sold in America and redefining what it means to give back and to do good in the world as a profitable consumer brand. Check out this episode. Check out other episodes available where all great podcasts are. Join me as we unpack the lessons and stories of today's most innovative leaders. All right, we're recording. So we kick off every one of these with a bit of an icebreaker just to kind of get to know you, understand a little bit better about you as a human. I, based on our conversation thus far, I want to know what the last thing you watched or read was that you can't stop thinking about. It's the idea or the book or the movie or the image or the thought that is it's got a hold of your mind, whether it's related to work or not.
Yeah, I mean, Last of Us, I think is still like emblazoned in my mind.
I just watched the first episode.
Oh my gosh, what?
Literally 2 days ago, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have the emotional capacity for this.
It's a lot, but like don't stop until you finish episode 3. I'll put it that way. That's like, if you can get to episode 3, I feel like you can. I mean, the rest of the show is great, but that's like my favorite.
That's really good to hear because I seriously was questioning I've never given up on a show, but I was like, man, I don't know if I can do this one. This is too much.
But it's kind of like Game of Thrones in that, like, you can't have expectations because everything you thought is just going to get thrown out of the window, and I think that's the kind of fun part, right?
Oh, I love it. Okay, good. I'm going to hang in there now because you said that. I don't have to just watch Ted Lasso. Maybe I'll watch Ted Lasso after I watch that show so I can kind of decompress.
Yes, definitely.
All right, last icebreaker question. Are you an animal person? Do you enjoy animals? And if so, what kind of animals are the animals that you gravitate towards?
Great question. Definitely an animal person. Definitely a cat person. I had a cat for a decade, and he passed away a couple years ago, but he was definitely my pride and joy. So I'm definitely a cat guy. I know that's kind of, I don't know. I feel like it can be a little weird, but in 2023, cats are kind of making this comeback. So I'm here for that. But I feel like they're a bit more particular and interesting. Dogs are just like love you for anything all the time, no matter what. And you got to kind of earn the love and trust of a cat. So I kind of like that vibe a little bit.
All right. So I want to start with a little background on you. So you're at this amazing company, Liquid Death. You guys are in many ways pioneers. You're shaping and innovating, and in many ways, you're leaving a huge footprint right now. But what did you do before Liquid Death? How did you get into this amazing company and this amazing place? What was your work previous to Liquid Death?
Absolutely. So it's got to go back about 7 years. I was going to Santa Monica College and studying nursing, and then I met a wonderful woman named Alicia in an English class, and she actually offered me to interview for her role as an office manager at a VC kind of startup incubator called Science, also in Santa Monica. And I actually ended up working there for about 5 years. Very unexpectedly. I feel like when you're in your 20s, you're kind of like, oh, okay, like this is a pretty good job, but I don't want to stay for too long. And you're kind of learning new skills and learning what you enjoy. And I really enjoyed people and support and administration and really like focusing on that. But it was mostly helping people because I was a nursing major. And then once I realized that the nursing major was impacted at the school, I switched to business. And that really kind of sparked my interest after working for a VC fund and working with all these startups. And then about 3.5 years ago, I met Liquid Death. I met the founders, and they had this crazy idea of, beverages in a can. And I was just like, that seems interesting. And I actually gave them their first office inside of the Science building. And that's what I did. I managed this 3,000 square foot 4-story building for about 5 years. And so over the course of that experience, I learned like, some startups kind of come, some go, some make it, some don't. But this liquid death thing seemed like a really kind of cool and interesting idea. And then the pandemic hit and most people weren't working in offices anymore. Nobody really was working in an office anymore unless you were doing like facilities and operations like I was. So I finished up my time at Science and I went to go work for a video game company called Cloud Imperium Games for about 2 years. And I was their kind of people studio operations manager during that time. And I had a lot of time to think about, do I want to go back into the office? Do I want to make a pivot more into like a people or a human resource role? And then Mike actually reached out to me at the end of December 2021. And he was like, hey, the company's doing really well. We're growing. And like, we've always loved working with you. Like, would you be interested in joining? And I said, I'll think about it. It's the holidays. I've got some time. And I wasn't like actively looking really, but it just seemed like a really great opportunity that I couldn't pass up. And I ended up meeting Natalie, who's been here since she's like an OG. She's been here since like day 1 or 2. She's like our director of people. And I ended up meeting Alice, who's our VP of people. And the team has just been fantastic. They welcomed me with open arms and it just felt like the right place to be at this point in my life.
And your role at Liquid Death currently, like the places you spend the most time, the areas you think the most about?
So I'm our senior benefits and employee engagement manager, which is a super long title, but it basically means I manage all of our benefits programs, medical, dental, vision, 401k. I manage all of our employee engagement. So sending out any surveys, all hands engagement surveys, making sure the company culture is at the level where it needs to be. And then I also manage all of our nonprofit partnerships, making sure that the dollars that we're actually donating towards nonprofits, killing plastic, just ensuring that they're being spent appropriately and they're going towards communities that need it the most.
I want to ask 2 questions about Liquid Death. One very high level, broad, just go with your gut, unless maybe you already have a pretty watertight answer. Maybe there's something that you have to say. And then the second question is going to be more around the nonprofit arm. But first question, if you were to summarize the culture of Liquid Death, like you would summarize the personality of a human, what is the culture of Liquid Death? What are the words that kind of bubble up for you that describe the organizational culture and personality of this giant brand, Liquid Death?
Yeah, I think the first word is wacky. We are a very wacky and interesting company. We have literally in our Slack channel something called a dumb ideas channel. And it's literally for us to come up with silly, fun ideas that we think would be cool that fit within the brand. But I think that's a pretty good indication that we don't take ourselves too seriously. But everyone that we bring on and that works here very much understands that this is a fantastic opportunity to really like add value to an organization and really drive it home. And I think that's really what kind of makes us unique and different is that I've never worked with so many skilled people in my life. Like everybody here is just so talented. It's almost overwhelming, but it almost makes you want to like rise to the occasion and be the best that you can be on behalf of your team and for everybody that you work with, even if you don't work directly with them. Silly, fun, but also sharp. Like our marketing and everything, like we when we put stuff out, it's like, it makes a splash. It's impactful. We're not just putting out things to put out things. It's really been thought through in a really interesting way. And I think, outside looking in, people are kind of like, oh, they're just that silly beverage brand, and we are, but we're also really making a difference in the world around us every day. We're not scared to make fun of ourselves. I think we're hilarious. We're bold. We're different. We're in your face. And no other, specifically water, because that's what we started off with. And now we've moved on to other beverages like tea. But no other beverage brand is really as loud and in your face and edgy and kind of like crazy as we are. No one's wearing other beverages, but they will definitely rock some Liquid Death swag every day of the week.
How do you temper or hold in tension that wacky, fun, shocking entertainment side of Liquid Death with the serious cause, nonprofit arm, wanting to make a difference and show up meaningfully in the world and have a culture that elevates human flourishing? Talk to me about the tension between those two things.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a line that we walk. On my side of the business, it's my job to really make sure that the dollars that we're, donating and that we're spending with nonprofits and partnering with them, that work is meaningful and actually does something, whether it be killing plastic pollution or inspiring the leaders of tomorrow. But I definitely think we are Liquid Death. We're about our products and we stand behind them and we believe in them and we believe in our mission of not only killing plastic pollution, but murdering thirst across the nation. Having that kind of tongue-in-cheek attitude that we are telling you that beverage, like water, is cool and it's awesome, but it's also like different because it's not single-use plastic and you're not seeing us just strewn about all over music festivals, and it's an infinitely recyclable can. And it's giving our audiences something that I think they're thirsty for, no pun intended. And I think it's something that like they either get it or they don't, right? When you look at a brand like Liquid Death, some people are like, oh my God, that's the devil's water, you know? And then other people are like, oh my God, that's the devil's water. And it's just a very quick understanding that like you either get us or you don't. And I think as long as we continue moving in the right direction of, you know, getting cans in hands, but also killing plastic pollution, I think people are that's going to resonate with people.
What are the specific goals of the nonprofit arm of the company?
Yeah, so Death to Plastic is our hashtag, and it's really kind of our mission and our goal. Our goal is to kill single-use plastic across the board. Second of all, to really make it fun and interesting. Like drinking water or drinking tea or drinking beverages is something that we do every single day, but it can be an enjoyable experience. Like people feel like they're holding a trophy when they hold our product, and it's a conversation starter. It's a really unique kind of thing. It really sells itself. It markets itself. And that's, I think, a really kind of unique goal or challenge that we have on the nonprofit side is letting people know, like, if you're going to do a beach cleanup or you're going to do some type of environmental project, like that's awesome. But you're probably going to need water too, or you're probably going to need some sort of beverage. And we can help be a part of that like greener initiative and helping understand or help educate and explain to people that like, you know, this is an infinitely recyclable can. And it's so much better than using a single-use plastic water bottle. And I think the more that people kind of come around to that and understand that and recognize that, the easier it is for them to understand our mission and to say like, oh yeah, you can easily replace these single-use plastics with cans. Like now that you have an option to do that.
I love your intersection of product, consumer culture, right? Beverages are hot and you're meeting culture right where they're at, intentionally branded, but there's also this deeply missional, you know, social impact side. How does that connect to HR? When you think about HR goals, hiring, culture, how do you intentionally integrate that or cultivate that in the culture versus just hoping for the best and maybe it's a happy accident or not in terms of who you hire?
That's a fantastic question. And I see it as an employee engagement kind of angle or task. I think by working for a company like Liquid Death, it definitely resonates with you that we are on this plastic killing mission, specifically single-use plastic killing mission. And you don't work here to be like, oh my God, I love plastic. Like no one joins us and is like, oh my gosh. If anything, they're like, oh my gosh, part of the reason I joined was because this is a part of our ethos and it's in our DNA. And so it feels very effortless. You know, we hire for talent and ability and culture obviously too, but it's almost kind of baked in. And so from an employee engagement perspective, I'm always looking to have employees do beach cleanups. Also recognizing too, I'm in Southern California, but like we have employees in 30 plus states now. So from Hawaii to New York and everything in between. So we have rivers and creeks and streams and all kinds of different waterways that most people don't really think about where plastic is being thrown in there too. And it's something that I've had to learn by being an employee here and having employees all over the country, that there's a lot more to do than just beach cleanups, right? You can get involved today by just having a few of your coworkers get together and just go pick up trash on the street or pick up, you know, litter at your local water reservoir or at your local lake. And I think part of that connects us all together, even though we're all remote and some people may be driving trucks all day, other people may be working behind a desk, but we still have it in our mind that when we do pass a plastic water bottle on the street, we'll probably pick it up and throw it in a bin because that's just kind of who we are as people and who we are as a brand.
Talk to me about branding at Liquid Death. I mean, obviously you have a compelling brand. It's an interesting brand. It's sticky. It's provocative. I'm assuming that's intentional. So what role does brand strategy play and how does that get developed and how does that make its way to your world and to culture and people and that side of the house? Yeah,
I think from an employee engagement perspective, I think having things like the sweatshirt I'm wearing right now, you know, it's almost like these skulls are our uniform in a weird way, but it's like the coolest uniform that we've ever put on. Like we feel very proud about wearing our Liquid Death merch, whether it be a hat or socks or a hoodie. And people recognize us, right? Salespeople tell me all the time that people stop their van, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, like this is the Liquid Death van. Like, do you have any product in there? Do you have any stickers? Do you have anything? And it's almost like people have become their own local celebrities in their own right, which is we wear it as a badge of honor no matter where we go. And how that connects to really our nonprofits is that I think telling people or explaining to people that like not killing the planet is pretty fucking cool, I think is a really cool thing that we're selling in a way too, not just our product. And I think a lot of nonprofits want a part of that. But at the same time, I'm in this boat where we get a lot of requests from a variety of nonprofits reaching out, wanting to work with us all the time. Like it's a lot, but it's never too much, I'd say. Like, and I always like to say, even if we can't partner on something today or tomorrow, we're still planting the seeds and we're watering them so that we can hopefully partner in the future. And I think that really differentiates us as a brand. Like, I don't think we'll ever get to a point, ideally, where we're so big that we're like, oh no, we'll never work with them or we'll never do that. Like, I don't think there's a never at this point, and we're young enough and like spry enough to be able to kind of say, oh, well, maybe we can do that, or that sounds kind of dumb and silly. Like, why not? You know? And I think that's really the fun part about, you know, managing this, but also, you know, being a part of this movement in a way, is understanding that like it's a team effort. And even if there's partners that it may not seem like it's a good fit, or you're like, how is this going to work? I think those are some of the most interesting kind of activations and sometimes one-off sponsorships that we've done in the past.
Talk about the importance of successfully communicating Liquid Death's mission. How do you keep these values, these ideas, these kind of driving principles alive through the, you know, week-to-week tyranny of the urgent that I'm sure happens? Like, what's the model, the communication? What's the way in which you keep these priorities in front of your people?
I think we keep it simple, right? We say death to plastic is our main slogan on the nonprofit side and overall, you know. Murder Your Thirst is also up there too. It's like murder your thirst, death to plastic, and aligning those two together. I think it's digestible for people. It's easy for people to kind of wrap their brain around, easy for them to get behind. And so I don't really see that as too much of a challenge. And I think as long as we're able to move forward and continue keeping it simple, I think there's many organizations that maybe try to do too much too quickly. And we're really focused on really making things quality and doing things extremely well with the resources that we have, but really trying to focus and make sure that we're doing things with quality. We have a goal in mind. We're not getting sidetracked from that goal of killing plastic, but also making sure that we're not going to say no to something that sounds pretty awesome and be like, oh, okay, we're more so like, how can we make it work?
That's super, super good. I want to talk a little bit about you. In the role that you're in, you want to be modeling passion and fit. And how does this mission, how do these things for you show up personally, add meaning and value to you, and how personally aligned are you with the organization that you work for professionally?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And thank you. I feel super grateful for the opportunity to even, you know, be in a position where I can enact change for such an incredible organization right now. I'm super passionate about not only the environment, but people. I love the people I work with every day. I love doing my job. Like, I manage benefits. So I'm the person that you call when you're going to have a baby, or, you know, you're getting a divorce from your partner, like some pretty serious stuff. And so I like being that person that's in your corner and is going to be able to say, like, it's going to be okay. Let me walk you through exactly what needs to happen in order for us to, you know, make it through this. And I know that we may just be your employer, but I like to see it as a bit more than that, because we spend so much time together working it's a startup. We work quite a lot, you know, and I want to make sure that the culture and the environment feels safe. It feels welcoming. It feels warm. But also you understand that it's kind of like a cool club too, you know, like we're pretty awesome people individually, and collectively, I think we're just this force that is a force to reckon with.
When it comes to the expectation of your workforce being connected to the philanthropic efforts, the nonprofit opportunities, maybe there's beach cleanups or other things, is it seen more as an invitation, as we don't even bother letting them know? It's totally independent of our people? Or is there an expectation that the people and the culture of our organization be engaged and actively involved in these things?
Yeah, I'd see it not as like a mandatory thing. I always want people to have the freedom to choose how they are a part of the organization. But it's more so, I feel like my role, especially with our sales team, is a lot of the time like, you know, kind of arming them with the resources and education to be able to go in there and be not only stewards of the company, but stewards of the planet, and really go into places and explain to these, you know, sales managers or store owners or various individuals that they come in contact with that by choosing Liquid Death, you're not only choosing, a pretty badass product, but you're actually choosing something that's better for the environment, and you're choosing something that their customers or people are it's really going to resonate with them, and they're really going to enjoy the experience of going to the store and interacting with a product or a display in that way. And while that may seem a bit more like salesy, I think ultimately, we are a sales-driven company, and we can't hide or shy away from that. But we do want to understand that we are doing a lot of great in the world. And it's really about explaining to employees exactly what work we are doing and how we have different nonprofit partners. And I always tell them too, hey, if you have a nonprofit that you work with in your local community, because we are spread out in various states, then you can always connect them to me. And we can always try to do things like sponsor a fundraiser for them, or do some type of, water sponsor situation for them. We also do a bunch of emergency relief stuff with various water crises around the country too. And so if there's something that's happening in their backyard that they're like, hey, how can we take part in this? I never want them to feel like they're like, oh, that doesn't really fit with what we're doing, so I shouldn't really talk to Lance about it. I'd rather them come to me and say, hey, Lance, I had this idea, or this person asked me about this. Is this possible? And then let's just have a discussion to see if it's, realistic or plausible or not.
I love the model of not just creating a big bucket philanthropy opportunity and saying, all of you should get in this, but actually letting the people in the culture have an imagination for what philanthropy or support or making the world better or human flourishing might look like, and then an open door to bring that to you. Now, it might not work. The answer might be no, but you're equipping or empowering them to have an imagination for what social good looks like and how Liquid Death can be a part of it. Am I saying that correctly?
Absolutely. And that goes back to just planting those seeds, right? I feel like many employees who work at Liquid Death, they may not have had any type of philanthropy work in their background, and that's perfectly okay. But for them to work here and understand that just by working here, they're a part of this mission, they're a part of this movement, I think that is enough for me to be like, okay, cool. I've inspired some leaders of tomorrow to understand and represent, so that whenever they go off to their next employer, on their next adventure, on their next challenge, they have something with them to show hey, I've actually made a difference in the world. And it does take the little things as well as the large things, right? And I think as long as we're understanding that and we're educating, not just educating employees, but having them fully embrace that and understand that by being a part of Liquid Death, you are a part of this larger mission. And it's a kind of a generational thing too. I think this generation understands that we are responsible for the world around us, and that's not going to change. It's actually becoming more important that we care about the environment and we care about things like killing plastic. So I think as long as we're understanding that and we're representing that well in our day-to-day life, I think employees are going to feel quite confident no matter where they go that they are a part of a larger change.
I want to explore that a little bit more deeply. Why do you think it's important for organizations, not just nonprofits, to focus on philanthropic efforts that make the world a better place, right? Call it what you want. Social impact, the triple bottom line, human flourishing. There's all sorts of words for it. But at the end of the day, organizations are getting more involved in making the world better, not just selling products. Why? What do you see happening that's driving that? Why has that become important? What do you think's kind of behind this philanthrocapitalism movement that's just picking up steam?
I think it's being requested by people that are buying our products. I think that's where the spark is. I don't think it's Liquid Death saying, oh, this is the direction that the world should be moving. I think it's the world telling us this is the direction that we're moving. And if you don't get on this ride, then you're going to miss out, right? And you're going to miss the train.
That's really good. Yeah, I think it's an interesting philosophy. I want to talk a little bit about the connection to senior leadership. So I could see in a big organization like Liquid Death, a guy like you, passionate, doing this thing, but it's just a little thing in the organization and it's philanthropy and it's kind of like, well, we do it because we should, because like you said, the marketplace wants it and it helps position our brand more successfully. But, the C-suite don't care. What's the culture at Liquid Death when these things typically to be successful cascade from the top down? What's the top culture? How do you feel supported or connected to the leadership at the top when it comes to these causes and ideas?
Yeah, no, and I think that's a real difference. I think you hit the nail on the head is that it has to be top down. I think Mike, our CEO, definitely cares about this stuff, and he's given me the reins to be able to drive it to a certain extent. But this is definitely his vision. I gave Liquid Death their first office, but I wasn't the person that decided that we would be donating a portion of every can sold to killing plastic pollution. That was a founder's idea, right? And I think for him to think of that at the even before we had the can, and to say this is going to be a part of the company no matter what, I think that has empowered me to go off and do my work in a way that is meaningful for the company across the board, in order to also instill this in the culture in a way that makes sense, right? I think it's important for us to recognize too that Liquid Death we are a product-driven company. We sell a whole bunch of stuff, but ultimately, I think the philanthropy piece is something that's like the icing on the cake. It's the cake that you take a bite of and you're like, wow, this isn't that like cheap frosting. This is that like real good frosting, that real good stuff. That when you taste it, it's meaningful, it's delicious, it makes you feel good inside, but also that it's real and it's impactful.
And the real frosting, it makes you feel good inside. That's a statement around this is genuine, sustainable, and authentic. This isn't just a marketing play by being good.
Totally. And the reality too is that I think the work speaks for itself. We partner with organizations like Five Gyres, whose mission is to literally study and answer unanswered questions around plastic pollution. And then we also partner with Thirst Project, whose mission is to provide clean drinking water to those who need it the most. So by partnering with organizations like that are very grassroots, they're in the field, they're doing the work, I think it helps people understand that we're not just talking the talk. We're partnering with organizations that are walking the walk because we recognize that they are doing the work. They are the people that are boots on the ground making it happen. And it takes them just as much as it takes us to partner in order to make it happen and move forward.
I want to just poke around a little bit on this topic and see if you have any opinions, because, in the nonprofit space, there's a lot of heartburn over philanthrocapitalism, right? Because what they're seeing is millennials and maybe Gen Z shifting giving from a nonprofit. Why do I give to a nonprofit when I can buy Liquid Death and change the world, when I can buy Patagonia and change the world, so I can have my consumer visions realized and make a difference, and now I can just spend more money the way I want to spend it and not give it to a nonprofit. Do you think nonprofits play an important role, and if so, why?
Yeah, they play a huge role. I think they, first of all, are like way smarter at whatever they're doing than we are, realistically, right? Like we're really good at selling beverages and selling clothes and like awesome apparel. But Five Gyres is really good at studying plastic pollution and figuring out how much plastic humans are putting into the ocean and putting out real studies and reports and science around it, right? Like, I mean, maybe we could do it in the future, but I can't envision us putting out some type of scientific research report ourselves, right? People would look at it like, oh, Liquid Death is doing that. Like that may not be like what do we learn in school? Like a good source of information, right? Yeah. But then with a partner like Five Gyres that we look into it, we're like, oh, they are the true scientists behind the facts, right? And by partnering with them, I think it adds it's a mutual partnership. We tell people like the stuff they're studying is really, really cool and interesting because we're really, really cool and interesting. And then they turn around and tell people like, oh, okay, yeah, they're not just like faking it. They're doing real work and supporting us in the work that we're doing in order to make a real change in the world. And I think having more partnerships like that and recognizing our places kind of in this mission is going to be super, super important and pivotal in order to, us kind of turning the tide against all the plastic that we're putting into the environment.
Do you find that the nonprofit, I would imagine a nonprofit partnering with Liquid Death is going to champion that as a huge badge of success. Like, man, we have this amazing consumer brand supporting us and partnering with us and believing in us, and they're going to champion that. Do you find the same thing's true for Liquid Death? Do you as a brand leverage or find value in your sales efforts by the nonprofits that you partner with? Do they add value to you, or is it more of just a philanthropic thing?
No, they 100% add value. And I think part of that is, as I mentioned, like arming our employees with the facts, right? We look to Five Gyres to say, hey, what are the current stats on plastic in the environment that we can talk to, whether it be our salespeople, our administrative people, support, or overall just global citizens of the earth. I think that is the key in the partnership, is they're giving us the tools to be successful the same way that we're giving them kind of the funding or the tools to be successful too. It's a handshake. It's an understanding that, no, we're both adding value to each other here, and it's not too heavy on one side or the other. And that's really what I've been focused on a lot, is really trying to empower and bolster up that partnership as we move forward together and we grow as an organization. I want to continue to grow in that too, and make sure that, we don't leave them behind, right? We're this rocket ship brand, and so are they. And I think that's part of the understanding in some of these relationships as we move about them.
We are obviously talking to a lot of nonprofit leaders, or they're listening at least to this podcast. When you think about a nonprofit partner, what are the things that you look at that instantly tell you, man, they might be trying to do a great thing, they might potentially be a good fit, but boy, there are deal breakers. There are things you sniff out or see that are just like, no, not going to touch this. And what are the things that really inspire you, that make you want to work with them because you feel like they have their shit together, or there's just something really inspirational about what you find there?
I don't run into too many things that are instant deal breakers, to be completely honest. I think we're pretty open to working with a variety of different nonprofits and groups. And I don't think there's much that, we're liquid death. We tend not to shy away from most things, to be completely honest with you. But on the flip side to that, organizations that we love working with, like our current partners, I think there's a certain amount of authenticity to them and to us. Like, we're a pretty authentic brand. We understand that, some people just aren't going to like us, and that's okay. But we're still going to continue on the path that we're on because we believe in it. And I love organizations that understand their own mission in that way too. They get that some people just aren't going to get it, and they recognize that that's okay. And there's plenty of other people that will, instead of trying to fit every single box or check every single box that you think your audience wants you to check. I think you have to have some originality and authenticity there to really shine and, see through the other side and to really kind of shine and be seen or stand out from the crowd. There's something to say about a track record, I will say, but for us as an organization, we're so young that our track record is still on fire. We just ran the race, right? We're still kind of building out our legacy, if you will, because we're so young. But in terms of being effective, if you care about something enough and you really push yourself or your organization or the people around you in that direction, then I feel like there's got to be a little bit of give and take there. There's got to be an understanding that we can't solve every problem in the world tomorrow. It's just very unrealistic, but we can do these micro changes over time in order to have a real lasting effect and a real meaningful effect on things like the planet, but also on culture and a variety of other things too. So I think you've got to play the long game in a way, but you've also got to focus on getting kind of little wins and partnering with organizations that are going to help you be effective in getting those little wins in order to have it be a long lasting change.
There are multiple brands that shift their messaging. Even the example of Patagonia's most recent catalog, it's their brand anniversary, and the entire thing that you get shipped has nothing to offer for products. It's all about mission, cause, movement, world. Right, extreme example as Patagonia is. How does Liquid Death tell the story of its impact? Is it available if you want to find it? Or do you trumpet it and put it out in a big way? What's the way in which you kind of tell the story of the positive impact you're making?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's word of mouth. I think organic, talking to someone in your circle, your family, your friend, a coworker, that is going to be the most authentic and meaningful way that we get our message across in a lot of different ways. I think second to that would be our marketing. I don't think we're going to be the organization that hangs our hat on, our sustainability, but we're definitely more so this is something that everybody should get involved in and be involved in and care about. And I think that organic effort is the real deal. I think having real organic conversations and not forcing people or force feeding people information, I don't think that is the way to go. And that's not who we are as a brand. I think all of our marketing and advertising and our content, realistically, it has it's funny and it's silly and it doesn't feel like we're selling you anything. And I think that's why people connect so much with it. It's just like, oh, look at this funny little clip, And then people are like, oh, they just so happen to have Liquid Death in the clip. And then they just so happen to also talk a little bit about ocean plastic and how terrible it is for the environment, And I think people have really welcomed that in this really kind of tough environment politically too.
If you had a magic wand and you could predict or move Liquid Death in the way that you think it should move when it comes to this thing that you're doing, this world that you're in, what does success look like in 36 months? Like if you could literally say, I have a magic wand and this is going to happen in 36 months. What's different in 36 months because of this opportunity you have with this fancy magic wand?
Yeah, I think people will at least think about not going to the store and buying single-use plastic water bottles or single-use plastic beverages. I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's just, we grew up in an environment where it's just so normal to have single-use everything. And it's quite a privilege to have that, And so in 36 months, if I had a magic wand, I'd replace all the single-use plastics with infinitely recyclable cans, single-use plastic water bottles, sorry. I think that's going to be the game changer and have people understand that no, it takes my little bit of effort every day, collectively, us all working together in order to make something happen. I think a lot of times people are like, oh, is my little water bottle going to make a difference? And the reality is, yes, in your life it will, or someone else's, or the sea creature that is choking on it later on. Yes, it will make a difference in their life. And I think as long as we're reframing our thought process to be a little bit more empathetic, but also observant and aware of the items that we're using in our day-to-day life, the better we are going to be as a human population, but also as a planet.
I'm going to ask a question that you can pass on if it feels like it's too vulnerable or it puts you at risk, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What about your role with culture, nonprofits? I mean, there's a lot that you're doing that is not traditional consumer product marketing, right? You're doing things that are contributing to all sorts of positive, amazing things, and clearly Liquid Death values that. But there have got to be things that are barriers or hindrances within Liquid Death that you'd love to remove if you could. And then there have got to be things that are absolutely working in your favor and giving you incredible wind and power and trajectory to move in the right direction. Let's start with the positive. What are the things at Liquid Death that are working in your favor, allowing you to be the most successful, have the biggest impact in your role?
I mean, the people who work here are a huge part of that. I could not do what I do without my team, like Alice and Natalie are incredible, as well as, senior leadership support and their buy-in on everything that we're doing on the nonprofit side of the work, as well as the day-to-day employees too. I think there's this understanding and feeling and energy behind not only are we getting cans in hands, but we're changing the world, right? And we're changing the culture, we're shifting it. Like when people go to music festivals and concerts, now it's like they just interact with us. They interact with our product. They understand that oh, cool, this is a really fun and interesting way to interact with a beverage that I would have bought anyway. A lot of that feeling and that energy behind the brand is really sustainable, and it's what keeps us going and waking up every day in order to do this work.
And then the same question around barrier. Are there any barriers or obstacles that you feel like, and every organization has them, what are they for Liquid Death? I mean, you're in this amazing organization. From the top down, there's care, there's support. A guy like you is given a role and a job to shape culture, do these incredible things. Well, what are some of the barriers or obstacles that you face that you would love to mitigate?
Yeah, I think it's hard when we all care so much. A lot of times people say it's not personal, it's business, But on the nonprofit and philanthropic side of the business, it can definitely get a little personal sometimes, I'm we're not just selling water. We're actually trying to create a movement of change, of killing plastic pollution and getting rid of single-use plastic water bottles. So it can kind of feel like we're yelling into the void sometimes, particularly when, I love going to concerts and music festivals, and I go to some not Live Nation events, and I see, I'm like, wow, there's so much single-use plastic. I forgot what this was like. And then I go to a Live Nation concert and I'm like, oh, wow, I see the night and day difference really just in my day-to-day life when I'm off the clock. And so it can definitely start to feel like, okay, if I wasn't in this kind of room or somewhat echo chamber where we get it and we understand, okay, how do we bring in other people that may not understand the brand or may not understand the mission? I think it's an ongoing challenge that that we face, but it's something that I'm up for. I mean, I feel like everybody in the company is definitely up for that challenge of helping bring more people over to our side.
And there's a real seriousness to what you're talking about, right? Like shouting into the void, single-use plastic, the amount of plastic pulled out of oceans. I mean, I've done some work with Surfrider, a good friend with that organization. Like I'm a huge advocate. At the same time, Liquid Death is a media entertainment company that sells water, right? Like there's a fun media entertainment side. Do you feel like that media entertainment aspect of Liquid Death can be leveraged for the nonprofit philanthropic side, or do you feel like that's more serious and the water product is fun? Like how do those two aspects work together? The seriousness of the problem you're trying to solve and the fun media, almost flippancy of the way in which you market and the brand shows up?
I think the answer to that is like dark humor. For us as a brand, we are dark humor. Like some of our first ads were like literally the thirst murderer, our guy like chopping heads off of people. So it's just very abrasive at times. But I feel like people are like, oh, okay, that's a lot. And I'm either going to turn this off, or that's a lot. I can't take my eyes off of it. And I don't know why. This is super creepy and weird, And I think kind of marrying that idea that you can have fun while having a little bit of seriousness in the back of your mind, or thinking about something that's serious while consuming or doing something fun, is really kind of where we sit in the line that we walk. And I think we do a really great job of being serious when we need to, but also recognizing that we're not taking ourselves too seriously as a brand, and we don't expect other people to take us too seriously either. But you're right. It's like, oh, you're that silly brand. And I'm like, yeah, we're that silly brand. That's also like a huge Live Nation partner, right? That's a huge initiative. The fact that we're part of their Greener, Better initiative, and we're like actively replacing single-use plastic water bottles at their concerts with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of attendees over the course of a year. I think that's where the seriousness comes in, and I think the numbers don't lie in that regard. And I think that's where, at the end of the day, I feel really confident and really proud of the work that we're doing and knowing that we are making a difference.
I love it. Using dark humor to tell a serious story, measuring the results. Yeah, so good. I had a question that I wanted to ask. I know we're getting ready to kind of wrap up here. This has been really helpful. There's a ton of really helpful things that have come out of this. But let me throw to this question. If you had a room, I mean, you spend a lot of time with nonprofit leaders, nonprofit partnerships. You're thinking about nonprofits, talking to nonprofits. If you had a group of nonprofit leaders and you were asked to tell them anything you want to tell them, like what's the one thing that you would say, here's the one thing I really want these nonprofit senior leaders to hear, to know, to be aware of?
It's okay to pay people what they're worth. I think that's a huge thing. In my brain, I think most people think of nonprofit work as like either volunteerism or like a very low paying job. And working on a people team, and especially working, on the administrative side, I'm just like, you've got to be able to compensate people and meet them where they need to be in order to get the best work out of them. And I feel very confident and proud to say that at Liquid Death, we do compensate people well, better than most, I'd say, especially in beverage. And so it's nice to be able to say that confidently, but also I really encourage nonprofits to think about where they're spending their money. Obviously, they do that because they have to, because budgets can be quite tight. But I think investing in your leaders that are going to lead your organization is going to be super crucial in order to get the best, not just bang for your buck. That's a weird way of saying it, but more so get the best work quality that you can out of your workforce that you have today.
I loved it. That was a money clip for sure. Well, that one I'm sure will be making the podcast.
Next month we have our giant death party, which I'm leading the charge on planning, and we're flying out everybody in the company to LA to get together and spend some quality time. You do some activities and drink a little bit and have a good time. But I think especially for a company like ours that's so spread out, and a lot of times people are driving vans all day, they don't really have too many interactions with their actual coworkers in person on a day-to-day basis. I think it's important to have that kind of, a couple times or 1 or 2 times a year where you can actually kind of stop working for a second and just focus on each other. It can be very easy to forget that we are human beings and this is our job and these are our careers and we're here to do that. But also we are human beings first, right? We have our own interests and values and personalities. And I think for us as a brand, I think we recognize that. And we want to encourage people to, take time off and spend time with their family family. We have a really inclusive PTO policy. It's very flex. You can take the time that you need in order to spend time, whether it be a cultural holiday or a holiday or a non-holiday, a day that you just need a mental health break. And just being open with that. I see people all the time, including myself. We have therapy on our calendars, on our work calendars, so people know. Like, hey, yeah, like I go to therapy once a week and that's okay, right? But I think being open and having these very real conversations with real people and not just saying, oh, what's your title? I think that is what differentiates us. And we treat people as people, and we recognize that they have a lot of other responsibilities and things going on in their life outside of liquid death, even though this is obviously all of our focus in wanting to build this thing and really fly it. But I think recognizing that we are more than just our jobs is a really big part of our company culture too.
I love it. That was super helpful. And I mean, again, our book is all about that type of stuff and integrating culture into brand. My last question for you is this. Do you find that the philanthropic work and the work that you're doing with these partners is furthering sales and helping drive the success of the brand, or is the success of the brand helping fund? I mean, obviously the success of the brand's helping fund and keep you a part of these things, but do these things help further the brand? And how does the philanthropic nonprofit side of Liquid Death help further sales, and how do you position that to tell that story?
Yeah, it definitely helps. Sales, I feel like at a company like ours, they're going to happen. You know, like we have had a lot of success in our sales, and I don't want to say that's because of our philanthropic mission. I don't think that's it. I think it's because of the content. I think it's because of the like cult like following of the brand, and people just kind of get it. But it definitely helps. I think it helps certain people wrap their brain around us as a brand. I think especially for, you know, we have a lot of people that buy our beverages that are like soccer moms buying it for their teenagers, or, you know, we have a college ambassador program where, you know, we have a whole bunch of product going to different parties around different college campuses across the country. That is going to happen because that's who we are as a company. But the philanthropic mission comes in when people actually take a look at the side of the can and they read what's on it. And they're like, oh, there's silly, fun stuff on here, but they're actually doing a lot of good for the environment. And so they feel, it's almost like you feel good by being a part of this club. And I think that's really what resonates with people. You know, it's almost like a secret society. It's almost like a really fun secret thing that we're doing. And we're not blasting it out saying, oh, look at all this good we're doing. It's just more so saying like, look at the results that we're having and look at the impact that we're making. And it's not so much to showboat it, you know, that we're an underdog type organization. We're competing against giants in our industry. And I think it's important that you can still be kind of the David and Goliath situation while being meaningful and impactful and trying to do good in the world. And understanding that it's cool to do good in the world and it's awesome. It doesn't make you whack, you know, to give a fuck about the environment. And I think that's something that we as a brand have embodied. And we're bold, we're silly, we're fun, but we're literally making water. We're making water and beverages that were kind of like okay or kind of stale. And we're trying to explain to people that we can be just as fun and badass as all these unhealthy brands, from energy drinks to beer to junk food. I think, you know, a lot of times people will reach for a Liquid Death because yeah, it tastes really great and the product is awesome, but also it does do a bit of good for the environment. And I think that is something that people recognize, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
This has been really, really helpful and tons of great stuff. I mean, I'm kind of combing in my mind through all the great nuggets that are going to be able to surface out of today's conversation. So thank you so much for doing this, for being a part of this. Really, really appreciate it. For more stories from experts in the industry and to learn how to take your nonprofit into the future, like this video, subscribe to our channel and podcast, and visit makehistoric.com/insights. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Ted Vaughn, and this is Future Nonprofit.